Everyone laughed when a maid proposed to a millionaire CEO until he spoke. Everyone laughed when a maid proposed to a millionaire CEO until he spoke. The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of the mansion's grand living room, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Lily moved quietly between the antique furniture, her feather duster making gentle swooshing sounds as she worked. The familiar scent of lemon polish filled the air as she carefully tended to each surface, maintaining the impeccable standards expected in the home of Alexander Ward, CEO of Ward Enterprises. From her position near the Victorian grandfather clock, she could hear Alexander's deep voice coming from the adjacent study. The door was partially open, allowing snippets of his conversation with his executive team to drift into the living room. "The merger needs to be completed by the end of the quarter," Alexander stated firmly. "We can't afford any delays." Lily couldn't help but smile to herself as she listened to him command the room. She'd worked in the mansion long enough to recognize the tension in his voice when he was stressed, even if he never showed it on his face. Today was definitely one of those days. As she moved closer to dust the elaborate mirror frames, she caught glimpses of the meeting through the reflection. Alexander stood tall in his perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his expression serious as always. Several staff members sat around the mahogany conference table, furiously taking notes on their tablets. "Sir, the paperwork alone will take weeks," one of the executives protested. "Then work faster," Alexander replied coolly. "I expect results, not excuses." Lily shook her head slightly as she continued her work. In the 2 years she'd been employed at the mansion, she'd never seen him truly relax. Even during rare moments when he wasn't working, his mind seemed consumed by business matters. Without thinking, Lily spoke up as she dusted a nearby side table. "You know, Mr. Ward, maybe what you really need is a wife to help you manage all this." The room fell silent. Lily froze, suddenly realizing she had spoken out loud. Her cheeks flushed as all eyes turned toward her, including Alexander's piercing gaze. The other staff members looked horrified at her breach of protocol, but instead of the sharp reprimand she expected, Alexander's expression shifted slightly. Was that amusement in his eyes? "A wife?" he repeated, turning fully toward her. "To help manage my empire?" Lily's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her feather duster. I just meant that sometimes it helps to have someone to share the burden with," she stammered, trying to maintain her composure. "Someone to come home to talk things through with." She trailed off, wishing she could disappear into the expensive Persian rug beneath her feet. The other staff members watched the exchange with a mixture of shock and fascination. To everyone's surprise, Alexander's lips curved into a slight smile. "You might have a point, Miss—" "Lily, sir. Lily Chen." "Miss Chen." He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "In fact, I have a proposition for you." The executives exchanged confused glances as Alexander stepped closer to Lily. She fought the urge to step back, her heart racing. "Live here with me for a month," he said, his voice steady and serious. "Let's see if we're compatible. If it works out, perhaps your suggestion about needing a wife isn't so far-fetched after all." Lily let out a nervous laugh, certain he must be joking. But Alexander's expression remained steady, his eyes locked on hers. The other staff members sat in stunned silence, some with their mouths literally hanging open. "Sir, Lily began, but words failed her. She looked around the room, seeking some indication that this was all an elaborate joke, but found only shocked faces staring back at her. "I'm quite serious," Alexander continued, maintaining his commanding presence despite the unusual nature of his proposal. "Unless, of course, you'd like to withdraw your suggestion about my need for a wife." Lily's nervous laughter echoed through the suddenly very quiet room. She clutched her feather duster tighter, feeling the weight of every stunned gaze upon her. The afternoon sun continued to stream through the windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air, seemingly as suspended in disbelief as everyone else in the room. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the mansion's living room as Lily stood rooted to the spot, her feather duster hanging limply at her side. The executives had filed out moments ago, leaving her alone with Alexander, who remained as composed as ever. "You think I'm not serious?" Alexander said, breaking the tense silence. His deep voice carried across the room with quiet authority. He moved to the leather armchair, settling into it with the grace of someone completely at ease with power. "Please, sit." Lily perched uncertainly on the edge of the adjacent sofa, her uniform suddenly feeling too tight. The expensive fabric beneath her seemed to mock her modest position. "Mr. Ward, I was just making conversation. I didn't mean to—" "Call me Alexander," he interrupted, his steel-gray eyes studying her with interest. "And you were right. I do need someone to share this life with." He gestured to the opulent room around them. "I've been watching you, Lily. The way you handle yourself, the way you care for this house and its people." Her cheeks burned under his scrutiny. "You've been watching me? I notice everything that happens in my house." Alexander leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees. "You're intelligent, caring, and you have an innate ability to make people feel at ease. These are valuable qualities." Lily's hands twisted in her lap. "Sir, Alexander, I'm just a maid. I don't belong in your world." "Let me be clear about what I'm proposing," he continued, ignoring her protest. 1 month, starting next week, you'll move into the East Wing suite. We'll have meals together, attend social functions, and see if we can build something real. His voice softened slightly. "No strings attached. If it doesn't work out, you'll return to your position with a generous compensation package." Her mind spun with the implications. The East Wing suite was larger than her entire apartment. "And if it does work out? Then we'll discuss a more permanent arrangement." Alexander stood, smoothing his impeccable suit. "You'll have a week to prepare. Mrs. Reynolds will help you with a suitable wardrobe and social etiquette training." The mansion's head housekeeper had been hovering nearby, and now stepped forward with a knowing look. Lily hadn't even noticed her presence. Lily's voice wavered. This was madness. Complete madness. And yet, something in Alexander's steady gaze made her heart flutter. "Yes," she heard herself say. "I'll do it." Alexander nodded, the barest hint of a smile touching his lips. "Good. Mrs. Reynolds will go over the details with you." He checked his expensive watch. "I have another meeting. We'll talk more at dinner tomorrow." As he strode from the room, Lily sat there, stunned by how quickly her life had changed. Mrs. Reynolds approached with a sympathetic smile. "Come along, dear," the older woman said kindly. "We have much to discuss." Lily rose on shaky legs, excusing herself to return to her quarters. She practically ran through the servants' corridors, her mind racing faster than her feet. When she finally reached her small room in the staff wing, she closed the door and leaned against it, her heart pounding. The familiar sight of her modest quarters grounded her somewhat. Her single bed with its neat floral comforter, the small dresser with its collection of framed family photos, the tiny window overlooking the garden, everything exactly as it had been this morning. Yet nothing was the same. She sank onto her bed, running her hands over the worn quilt her mother had made. What would her parents think? Their daughter, a maid, entering into some sort of arrangement with one of the wealthiest men in the city? It sounded like something from a fairy tale or a romance novel, not real life. Excitement bubbled up inside her chest, warring with the nervousness that made her stomach clench. Alexander Ward wanted her to live with him, to see if they could build a life together. The same man she'd watched from afar for 2 years, admiring his quiet strength and determination, had been watching her too. Lily hugged her pillow to her chest, her mind whirling with possibilities. In 1 week, she would move from this tiny room to the East Wing suite. In 1 week, she would step into Alexander's world of wealth and power. In 1 week, everything would change. Lily stood before the full-length mirror in her small room, hardly recognizing herself. The cream-colored blouse and tailored navy skirt Mrs. Reynolds had selected felt foreign against her skin, so different from her usual maid's uniform. Her dark hair, usually pulled back in a practical bun, fell in soft waves around her shoulders. "Remember what we practiced," she whispered to her reflection, trying to calm her racing heart. The past week had been a whirlwind of lessons with Mrs. Reynolds, everything from which fork to use at formal dinners to how to properly address Alexander's business associates. She touched the delicate pearl earrings, another gift from Mrs. Reynolds, and took a deep breath. The familiar scent of lemon furniture polish and fresh laundry drifted through her open door, reminding her that she was still in her comfort zone, at least for the next few minutes. A knock at the door made her jump. "Come in," she called, smoothing her skirt for the 100th time. Mrs. Reynolds appeared, her usual stern expression softened by a maternal smile. "Are you ready, dear? Mr. Ward is waiting in the main hall." "I think so." Lily gestured to her 2 small suitcases. "I wasn't sure what to bring, since you said most things would be provided." "That's perfectly fine." Mrs. Reynolds picked up one of the cases. "The rest of your belongings can be moved later, once you're settled." Lily grabbed the other suitcase, her hands trembling slightly. As they walked through the servants' corridors one last time, her fellow staff members poked their heads out to wish her luck. Jenny, the kitchen maid who had become her closest friend, even rushed out to give her a quick hug. "You look beautiful," Jenny whispered, "like you belong in his world already." Lily squeezed her friend's hand, grateful for the encouragement. All too soon, they reached the main hall where Alexander waited, his tall frame cutting an imposing figure against the grand staircase. He turned as they approached, and Lily's breath caught. She'd seen him in suits before, of course, but something about this moment made him seem different. More real, perhaps, now that she would be sharing his space. "Lily," he said, his voice carrying across the marble floor, "you look lovely." "Thank you," she managed, proud that her voice remained steady. Mrs. Reynolds quietly disappeared with Lily's suitcases, leaving them alone. Alexander extended his arm. "Shall we?" Lily placed her hand in the crook of his elbow, remembering her lessons about proper etiquette. His warmth seeped through the expensive fabric of his suit, making this surreal situation suddenly, startlingly real. They climbed the sweeping staircase in silence, their footsteps echoing off the high ceilings. Lily had cleaned these halls countless times, but walking them as Alexander's guest, or whatever she was now, felt entirely different. He led her through corridors lined with priceless artwork, past rooms she'd only glimpsed while dusting. Finally, they stopped before a set of double doors in the East Wing. "Your suite," Alexander said, pushing open the doors. Lily stepped inside and barely suppressed a gasp. The sitting room alone was bigger than her entire apartment. Soft cream walls complemented the rich wooden furniture, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the estate's manicured gardens. Through one door, she glimpsed a bedroom with an enormous 4-poster bed, and through another, a luxurious bathroom with marble countertops. "I hope you'll be comfortable here," Alexander said, remaining in the doorway. While this arrangement began unusually, I want to be clear about my expectations. Lily turned to face him, her heart pounding. This may be a trial, but I expect us both to treat it as any other relationship. We'll have dinner together each evening, attend events as a couple, and get to know each other properly. His gray eyes met hers steadily. Does that sound acceptable? Yes, Lily said softly. I understand. Good. He nodded once. I'll leave you to settle in. Dinner is at 7 in the small dining room. With that, he turned and left, closing the doors behind him. Lily stood in the middle of her new sitting room, surrounded by luxury, but feeling utterly alone. The clock on the mantel showed just past 5, less than 2 hours until dinner with Alexander. Less than 2 hours until this experiment truly began. Lily stared at her reflection in the hallway mirror, smoothing her navy dress one final time before entering the small dining room. Despite its name, the room was far from small, with a crystal chandelier casting warm light over the polished mahogany table. Alexander was already seated at the head of the table, his attention focused on a document in his hand. He looked up as she entered, setting the paper aside. "Good evening, Lily." "Good evening," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. A butler appeared silently at her elbow, pulling out the chair to Alexander's right. The soft scrape of the chair against the hardwood floor seemed deafening in the quiet room. The first course arrived, a delicate soup that Lily recognized from her days helping in the kitchen. She gripped the correct spoon, thankful for Mrs. Reynolds' crash course in dining etiquette. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the gentle clink of silver against fine china. Lily's mind raced for something to say. The weather? Too mundane. His work? Too presumptuous. Her former duties as a maid? Definitely not appropriate. She took another spoonful of soup, acutely aware of Alexander's presence beside her. The butler returned to clear their plates, replacing them with the main course. The aroma of perfectly cooked beef and roasted vegetables filled the air, but Lily's appetite had abandoned her. She cut her meat into small, precise pieces, remembering to take measured bites as she'd been instructed. "The wine is a Bordeaux from my father's collection," Alexander said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I thought you might enjoy it." Lily glanced at the deep red liquid in her glass. "Thank you. It's lovely." She took a sip, praying she wouldn't spill any on the pristine tablecloth. Silence descended again. Through the tall windows, Lily could see the sun setting over the gardens, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. She'd often admired these same sunsets while cleaning these windows, but never from this side of the glass. "How are you finding your new accommodations?" Alexander asked, his tone formal but not unkind. "They're beautiful," Lily answered truthfully. "The view of the gardens is spectacular." "Yes, I thought you might appreciate that. I've seen you spending time there during your breaks." Heat crept up Lily's neck at the thought of Alexander observing her. Had he been watching her all this time? The idea made her stomach flutter. The main course was cleared away, and dessert appeared. A perfect chocolate soufflé that Lily knew took hours of preparation. She remembered watching the pastry chef practice making them, determined to get them just right for the master of the house. "You know," Alexander said, setting down his dessert spoon, "I've always been impressed by your attention to detail." Lily looked up, startled by the unexpected compliment. "When you worked here, you noticed things others missed. The way you remembered everyone's preferences, anticipated needs before they arose." His gray eyes met hers directly. "It shows a remarkable intelligence." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't the cold, calculating businessman she was used to seeing. For a moment, she glimpsed something else, a hint of warmth, perhaps even admiration. Thank you, she managed, her cheeks warming under his steady gaze. I just try to pay attention to what makes people comfortable. That's precisely what I mean. Alexander leaned back slightly in his chair. You understand people in a way that most don't. It's a rare quality. Their eyes met across the table, and for the first time since this strange arrangement began, Lily felt something shift between them. The overwhelming formality of the situation softened, replaced by a tentative connection that made her heart beat a little faster. The butler appeared with coffee, and Lily wrapped her hands around the delicate cup, grateful for something to hold on to as she processed this unexpected turn in their conversation. Alexander had noticed her, really noticed her, long before their unconventional arrangement. The thought made her see their situation in a new light, and she found herself wondering what else she might discover about the man behind the CEO's mask. Lily woke early the next morning, her body still on its Maid schedule. The luxury of her new room felt foreign, the silk sheets, the plush carpet beneath her feet, the expansive private bathroom. Out of habit, she made her bed with precise hospital corners, smoothing every wrinkle from the duvet. She dressed in a simple blouse and skirt, unable to shake the feeling that she should be in her maid's uniform. The mansion felt different from this side of service, larger somehow, more intimidating. Through her window, she watched the gardeners trimming the hedges, remembering how she used to chat with them during her breaks. The morning stretched into afternoon, and Lily found herself at loose ends. She'd organized her new closet 3 times, dusted surfaces that were already spotless, and rearranged the few personal items she'd brought with her. The silence of the massive house pressed in around her. From down the hall, she heard the steady tap of computer keys coming from Alexander's office. He'd disappeared in there right after breakfast, which had been another quiet affair with just the 2 of them at opposite ends of the long dining table. Unable to resist, Lily began tidying the sitting room adjacent to her suite. The familiar motions of cleaning brought comfort, even though she knew the regular staff would handle it. She was adjusting a vase of fresh flowers when a voice behind her made her jump. You don't need to do that anymore. Alexander stood in the doorway, his tie loosened slightly, the only sign that he'd been working all day. Lily's hands fell to her sides. I know, it's just habit, I suppose. He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Would you join me for dinner? In my private dining room? The invitation surprised her. Of course. 7 o'clock? At her nod, he turned and disappeared back to his office. Lily spent the next few hours trying to calm her nerves. The private dining room was smaller than the formal one they'd used last night, more intimate. When she arrived, Alexander was already there, having changed into a fresh shirt. The table was set for 2, candles casting a warm glow over the scene. I thought we might be more comfortable here, he said, pulling out her chair. The first course arrived, a simple soup that smelled divine. Lily took a careful spoonful, determined not to spill. Do you miss it? Alexander asked suddenly. Working here? Lily considered the question. Parts of it. I miss the other staff. They became like family. But... She hesitated. But I always felt like I was watching life happen from the outside, especially in the library. She blushed, realizing she might have said too much. Alexander's interest seemed piqued. The library? I love books, Lily admitted. Sometimes when I was dusting in there, I'd read a few pages. I hope that wasn't inappropriate. To her surprise, a small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. What do you like to read? Everything. Classics mostly. Jane Austen is my favorite. Romance and happy endings? There was no judgment in his tone, only curiosity. Lily nodded. I like the idea that love can overcome social barriers, that people can find happiness despite their differences. Alexander was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in his glass. I used to believe in that. What changed? He set his glass down carefully. Experience. I learned that keeping people at a distance is safer. Solitude can't hurt you. The vulnerability in his voice made Lily's heart ache. But doesn't it get lonely? Lonely is better than broken. He said it matter-of-factly, but Lily saw something flicker in his eyes, a hint of old pain carefully buried. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as they finished their meal, but Lily couldn't shake the feeling that she'd glimpsed something important, a crack in Alexander's carefully constructed walls. As they ate their dessert, she noticed that the silence between them had changed. It felt less awkward, more comfortable, as if they'd reached some kind of understanding. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows of the breakfast room, catching the crystal chandelier and scattering rainbow patterns across the white tablecloth. Lily sat at her usual spot, closer to Alexander now than she had been on that first awkward evening. She watched him methodically butter his toast, his movements precise and controlled like everything else about him. The morning paper lay untouched beside his plate, a break from his usual routine. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his typically immaculate shirt had the faintest wrinkle at the collar. Something was different today. "Did you sleep well?" Lily ventured, adding a splash of cream to her coffee. Alexander's hands stilled for a moment. "Not particularly." His voice was rougher than usual. Tired. "Sometimes a cup of chamomile tea helps," she offered. "I could ask Mrs. Bennet to bring you some tonight." He looked up, seeming almost surprised by her concern. "I haven't had chamomile since I was a child." "Oh?" Lily seized the opening, hungry for any personal detail he might share. Alexander set down his butter knife, a distant look crossing his face. "My grandmother used to make it for me. She'd add honey and lemon, serve it in these ridiculous floral cups that belonged to her mother." Lily smiled softly, imagining a young Alexander sipping from delicate china. "She sounds lovely." "She was." He paused, tracing the rim of his coffee cup. "She lived with us after my grandfather passed. Every Sunday she'd insist on having a proper tea party, just the two of us. My father thought it was a waste of time. He wanted me focused on business education, even then." "But you went anyway?" "Every week." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "She'd tell me stories about her childhood in England, about meeting my grandfather at a dance. Sometimes she'd sneak cookies from the kitchen. They were always slightly burnt because she insisted on making them herself instead of letting the cook do it." Lily leaned forward slightly, entranced by this glimpse into his past. "Did she teach you to bake?" Alexander actually chuckled, the sound warming the formal room. "She tried. I was terrible at it, but she'd praise every misshapen cookie I made like it was a masterpiece." His expression softened with the memory. "She was the only one who never expected me to be perfect." "What happened to her?" Lily asked gently. "She passed away when I was 12. Heart failure." The warmth faded from his face. "The house felt empty after that. My father threw himself deeper into work and I—" He trailed off, his walls starting to rebuild themselves. "Started doing the same?" Lily finished quietly. Alexander nodded, reaching for his coffee. It seemed easier than feeling the loss. Lily watched him retreat back into himself, but something had changed. In those few minutes of vulnerability, she'd seen past the polished exterior of the successful CEO. She'd glimpsed the boy who'd made burnt cookies with his grandmother, who'd found comfort in Sunday tea parties and storytelling. The breakfast room fell quiet again, but the silence felt different now. Lily sipped her coffee, stealing glances at Alexander as he finally picked up his newspaper. His shoulders weren't quite as rigid as usual, his expression slightly less guarded. She thought about the chamomile tea she kept in her room, wondered if she could find cups with floral patterns somewhere in the mansion's vast kitchen. Maybe some small gesture could show him that it was okay to remember, okay to feel. A maid entered silently to clear their plates, and Alexander stood to leave for his office. At the door, he paused. "Thank you," he said softly, not turning around, "for listening." Before Lily could respond, he was gone, leaving her with the lingering warmth of shared memories and the growing certainty that there was so much more to Alexander than the world was allowed to see. The evening sun painted long shadows across the mansion's polished floors as Lily arranged fresh flowers in a crystal vase. 2 weeks had passed since that revealing breakfast conversation, and slowly but surely, the rigid atmosphere of the house had begun to soften. She glanced at the grandfather clock. 6:45 p.m. Alexander would be finishing his work soon. Like clockwork, she heard his office door open upstairs, followed by his measured footsteps descending the grand staircase. "Those are new," he commented, noticing the yellow daisies on the dining room table. "From the garden," Lily explained, adjusting a stem. "I thought they might brighten up the room." They settled into their usual seats as Mrs. Bennet served dinner, roasted chicken with vegetables and herbs from the kitchen garden. The formal dining room had become less intimidating over the past weeks, their meals evolving from tense silence to comfortable conversation. "How was your meeting with the board?" Lily asked, remembering his packed schedule for the day. Alexander's shoulders relaxed slightly as he reached for his water glass. "Better than expected. They approved the new environmental initiative." "The one for sustainable manufacturing?" Lily smiled, recalling their discussion about it last week. "That's wonderful." "You were right about emphasizing the long-term benefits," he admitted. It helped convince the more skeptical members. Their conversation flowed easily now, a stark contrast to their first awkward dinner. They talked about their days, shared memories, and discussed dreams they'd never voiced to others. Alexander spoke about his college years, studying business while secretly wanting to learn photography. Lily shared stories about growing up with 3 siblings in a small house filled with laughter and chaos. "Did you ever take any photographs?" Lily asked, genuinely curious. Alexander's expression softened. "I still have an old camera somewhere. Haven't touched it in years, though." "Why not?" He paused, considering. Life got in the way. Responsibilities, expectations. He trailed off, then added quietly, "Sometimes it's easier to focus on what others want you to be." Lily nodded, understanding. But it's never too late to start again. Their empty plates were cleared away, and dessert appeared, a simple apple tart that filled the room with the scent of cinnamon and vanilla. As they enjoyed the warm pastry, Lily noticed Alexander watching her with an unfamiliar expression. "What is it?" she asked, self-consciously dabbing her mouth with her napkin. He seemed to struggle with his words for a moment, something she'd never seen before. "I wanted to thank you," he said finally. "For what?" "For..." He gestured vaguely at the room, the flowers, the warm light, the lingering aroma of their meal. "This. All of it. I didn't realize how..." He paused, searching for the right words. "How empty this place was before. How empty I'd let it become." Lily felt her cheeks warm at his sincerity. "I haven't done anything special." "You have," he insisted quietly. "You've made this house feel like..." He stopped himself, but Lily could guess the word he'd held back. "Home." She smiled, her heart beating a little faster as she looked at the man across from her. The stern CEO was still there, but now she could see beyond that facade. To someone who appreciated simple flowers in crystal vases, who remembered his grandmother's burnt cookies, who once dreamed of capturing the world through a camera lens. The business arrangement they'd agreed to seemed far away now, replaced by something neither of them had expected. Something that made Lily's pulse quicken when their eyes met across the table. Something that softened Alexander's stern expression when she entered a room. As Mrs. Bennet cleared away their dessert plates, Lily caught herself wondering if this arrangement was becoming something more than either of them had planned. The thought should have frightened her, but somehow it didn't. The evening had settled into a peaceful quiet, as Lily prepared 2 cups of chamomile tea in the mansion's spacious kitchen. Steam rose in delicate wisps from the fine china cups, a far cry from the chipped mugs she'd used in her old apartment. She arranged some butter cookies on a small plate, remembering how Alexander had mentioned they were his favorite. She found him in the library, a space that had become their unofficial retreat after dinner. The room's dark wooden panels and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves created a cozy atmosphere, especially in the warm glow of the antique reading lamps. "Thank you," Alexander said, as she set his cup down. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, small gestures that showed how comfortable he'd become in her presence. Lily settled into the leather armchair across from him, tucking her feet under her. "The stars are beautiful tonight," she observed, glancing through the tall windows. "They remind me of my mother," Alexander said unexpectedly. "She used to tell me that stars were windows to heaven, where angels watched over us." He gave a self-conscious laugh. "Silly, I know." "I don't think it's silly at all," Lily replied softly. "My grandmother used to say that love was like starlight. It travels across impossible distances just to reach us." Alexander's expression grew thoughtful. "And what do you believe about love?" The question hung in the air between them. Lily wrapped her hands around her warm cup, considering her answer carefully. "I believe love is built on small moments," she began. "It's in the trust we place in others, the kindness we show when no one's watching. It's not just grand gestures or passionate declarations. It's in making someone's tea exactly how they like it, or remembering their favorite cookies." She gestured at the plate between them. Alexander picked up a cookie but didn't eat it, turning it over in his hands. "And you don't think that makes it fragile? All those small moments that could so easily break?" "Maybe that's what makes it stronger," Lily suggested. "Like a tapestry. One thread might break, but thousands woven together create something lasting." He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his tea as if it held answers. "I used to believe in love like that," he admitted. "Before." Lily waited patiently as he gathered his thoughts. "Before Claire," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "We were young, full of dreams. She made me believe in everything. Love, happiness, forever. Then one rainy night, a drunk driver took it all away." His hands tightened around his cup. "After that, it seemed safer to focus on business, on things I could control." "I'm so sorry," Lily said softly, her heart aching for the pain she heard in his voice. "The worst part," he continued, "is that I can't remember her favorite tea, or what cookies she liked. All those small moments you talked about, they've faded. Sometimes I wonder if I've betrayed her by letting them slip away." "Grief doesn't work like that," Lily said gently. "You haven't betrayed anything by surviving, by continuing to live." Alexander looked up at her then, his eyes vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "But what if I'm not really living? What if I'm just existing?" "Then maybe it's time to start collecting new moments," Lily suggested. She hesitated, then added, "It doesn't dishonor what you had before to find happiness again." He was quiet for so long that Lily wondered if she'd said too much. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "You make it sound so simple." "Not simple," she corrected. "Possible. Their eyes met across the space between them, and Lily felt something shift in the atmosphere. Alexander had never been this open with her before, had never revealed so much of his pain and fear. Part of her wondered if this vulnerability was genuine, or if it was calculated to keep her off balance. But looking at him now, seeing the raw emotion in his usually guarded expression, she wanted to believe it was real. She just wasn't sure if she could trust that feeling. Lily hadn't meant to find it. She'd been organizing Alexander's study while he was in a meeting, something she still did despite their changing relationship. The letter fell from between two leather-bound books, its paper yellowed with age, corners soft from handling. Her first instinct was to put it back, but a name caught her eye. Dearest Claire. The handwriting was younger, less controlled than Alexander's current precise script, but unmistakably his. She stood frozen, the paper trembling in her hands. This was private, something she had no right to read. But the words seemed to leap off the page. I miss you every day. The doctors say there's nothing more they can do. What are you doing? Alexander's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway, his face unreadable as he stared at the letter in her hands. I'm sorry, Lily said quickly. I found it while cleaning. I didn't mean to put it back. His voice was ice cold, colder than she'd heard since their first days together. Lily set the letter on his desk but didn't move away. Alexander, she said softly. Who was Claire? He strode to his desk, snatching up the letter and shoving it into a drawer. That's none of your concern. Last night you mentioned her name, Lily pressed gently. You said something about a drunk driver. Stop. The word came out sharp, like breaking glass. I know you're hurting. You don't know anything, he snapped, but his voice cracked on the last word. Lily took a step closer, noting how his shoulders were rigid with tension. You're right. I don't know. But I'd like to understand, if you'll let me. Alexander gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles white. For a long moment, the only sound was their breathing and the distant ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. She was everything, he finally said, so quietly Lily almost missed it. We met in college. She was studying art, watercolors. She could make the most ordinary things look magical. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. She used to paint the sunrise from my apartment window, said each morning was different, special. Lily stayed perfectly still, afraid any movement might break this moment of openness. We were engaged, Alexander continued, young and stupid and so sure we had forever ahead of us. His voice grew rough. Then she got sick. Cancer. It happened so fast. One day she was painting sunrises, the next she could barely hold a brush. He pulled open the drawer and took out the letter with trembling hands. I wrote this the day before she died. I never gave it to her. She was already... He swallowed hard. She was already too far gone to read it. I'm so sorry, Lily whispered, her heart aching for the pain in his voice. Everyone said time would heal it. He gave a bitter laugh. But time just taught me that loving someone means giving them the power to destroy you. I threw myself into work instead. It was safer, cleaner. Numbers don't die. Contracts don't break your heart. Lily wanted to reach out, to offer some comfort, but she sensed he wasn't finished. And now, he finally turned to face her, his eyes vulnerable in a way that made her breath catch. Now you're here, with your kindness and your gentle heart, making me feel things I swore I'd never feel again. And it terrifies me. The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest. Lily stood quietly, letting Alexander's words settle around them like falling snow, understanding now why he'd kept his distance for so long, why he'd built his walls so high. The study fell silent except for their breathing and that steady ticking from the hall, marking time as they stood in this moment of truth, neither quite sure what to say next. Morning light filtered through the dining room's tall windows, casting long shadows across the elegant table where Lily and Alexander sat. The only sounds were the gentle clink of silverware against fine china and the distant bustle of staff preparing for the day. Lily stirred her tea, sneaking glances at Alexander from behind her cup. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he hadn't slept well. After yesterday's revelation about Claire, the air between them felt heavier, charged with unspoken words. "Would you like more coffee?" she asked, breaking the silence. Alexander looked up from his untouched eggs. "No, thank you." His voice was quiet, controlled. He cleared his throat. "About yesterday." "You don't need to explain," Lily interrupted gently. "Everyone has parts of their past they'd rather keep private." He studied her face for a moment. Most people would be pushing for more details. "I'm not most people." She offered a small smile. "And you'll share more when you're ready. If you're ever ready." Something in his expression softened. "No, you're certainly not most people." The day passed slowly. Lily kept herself busy with her usual tasks, though she'd long since stopped thinking of herself as just the maid. Alexander worked in his study, emerging only for a quick lunch that was just as quiet as breakfast. As afternoon faded into evening, Lily was arranging fresh flowers in the living room when Alexander appeared in the doorway. "Would you join me on the terrace?" he asked. "The sunset tonight, it's quite something." Lily's heart skipped. Of course. They stood side by side at the terrace railing, watching as the sky painted itself in brilliant oranges and pinks. The garden below was awash in golden light, making everything look almost magical. "Claire used to say sunsets were nature's way of showing off," Alexander said suddenly. His voice was soft, contemplative. She'd spend hours trying to capture these colors in her paintings. Lily turned to look at him, surprised by the voluntary mention of Claire. His profile was outlined in the fading light, making him look younger, more vulnerable. "She sounds like she was a wonderful person," Lily said carefully. "She was." Alexander's hands tightened on the railing. "But talking about her today, it's different than before. Usually the memories feel like wounds that never quite healed. But telling you about her..." He paused, searching for words. "It didn't hurt as much as I expected." The admission hung between them, weighted with meaning. Lily felt her pulse quicken, aware of how close they were standing, how intimate this moment felt. "Sometimes sharing our pain makes it easier to bear," she said softly. Alexander turned to face her fully. "You make a lot of things easier, Lily. I'm just not sure if..." He trailed off, uncertainty clouding his features. "If what? If what I'm feeling is real, or if I'm just..." He gestured vaguely between them. "This situation we've created, living together like this. Sometimes I wonder if we're just playing parts in some elaborate performance." Lily's heart clenched. She'd been wrestling with similar doubts. "I know what you mean," she admitted. "Sometimes it feels like we're in our own little world here, separate from reality." The last rays of sunlight caught in Alexander's eyes as he looked at her. And yet, she agreed, understanding the unspoken words. They stood in comfortable silence as the sky deepened to purple, each lost in their own thoughts about what was real and what might just be an illusion created by their unique circumstances. The evening air grew cooler, but neither moved to go inside, both seemingly reluctant to break this moment of quiet understanding. Lily's phone buzzed against her hip as she dusted the library shelves. She rarely received calls during work hours, and seeing her mother's name on the screen made her stomach twist with worry. Stepping between two tall bookcases, she answered quietly, "Mom, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine, sweetheart. We just miss you." Her mother's warm voice carried through the line. "Your sister's birthday is this weekend, and we were hoping you might come home for a few days." Lily's hand stilled on the feather duster. Home. The word stirred a mix of longing and anxiety in her chest. She hadn't seen her family since starting this arrangement with Alexander, and they had no idea about her current situation. I'm not sure if I can," she stammered, glancing toward the library door. "My work situation is complicated right now." "Just for the weekend," her mother pressed gently. "Sarah would love to see you, and your father's been asking about you too." Lily closed her eyes, torn between her duties here and her desire to see her family. "Can I call you back in a bit? I need to check something first." After hanging up, she stood motionless between the bookcases, lost in thought. The sound of footsteps made her jump. Maid. "Is everything all right?" Alexander stood in the doorway, his expression concerned. "You look troubled." Lily twisted the dusting cloth in her hands. "My family called. They want me to visit for my sister's birthday this weekend." She met his eyes uncertainly. "I know we're supposed to be doing this trial marriage thing, but—" "You should go," Alexander said, surprising her with his immediacy. "Really?" Lily blinked. "I wasn't sure if—" Alexander stepped further into the library, his hands in his pockets. "Actually," he said, then paused as if considering his next words carefully. "I could come with you." The dusting cloth slipped from Lily's fingers. "What?" "If you'd like," he added quickly. "It might be good for us to experience something outside these walls together." His voice grew quieter. "I haven't left the mansion grounds in nearly 3 years, except for business meetings." Lily stared at him, processing this revelation. 3 years? But why? Alexander moved to the window, looking out over the manicured gardens. "After Claire, I found it easier to stay here. The outside world held too many memories, too many possibilities for pain." He turned back to her. "But maybe it's time to change that." Something warm bloomed in Lily's chest. "Are you sure? My family's pretty different from what you're used to. We live in a small house, and they can be a bit overwhelming." A ghost of a smile touched Alexander's lips. "I think I can handle it. Besides, isn't that what this arrangement is about? Getting to know each other's worlds?" Lily called her mother back, heart racing as she explained she'd be bringing someone with her. Her mother's excited squeal made her wince and hold the phone away from her ear. The next morning, they set out in Alexander's sleek black car. Lily had insisted on driving, knowing Alexander hadn't been behind the wheel in years. As they pulled through the mansion gates, she noticed his hands gripping his knees tightly. "We can turn back if you want," she offered softly. Alexander shook his head. "No, I need to do this." As they drove further from the mansion, Lily noticed Alexander's posture gradually relaxing. The morning sun streamed through the windows, and a comfortable silence settled between them. "Tell me about your sister," Alexander said suddenly. "Sarah? She's 3 years younger than me, works as a kindergarten teacher." Lily smiled. "She's the fun one in the family, always has been." "And you're the responsible one?" "Someone had to be," Lily laughed. The sound seemed to surprise them both. Alexander's lips curved into a genuine smile. "I like your laugh," he said quietly. "You don't do it often enough." "Neither do you," she countered, feeling bold. To her delight, he chuckled. Fair point. The tension that had defined so many of their interactions seemed to dissolve with each mile they drove. They talked about simple things, favorite foods, childhood memories, funny stories. When Lily took a wrong turn and had to navigate a complicated roundabout 3 times, Alexander's laughter filled the car, real and unreserved. The small town of Millbrook appeared around a bend in the road, its main street lined with brick buildings and colorful awnings. Lily felt her heart lift at the familiar sight of Pete's Hardware, with its perpetually crooked sign, and the ice cream parlor where she'd spent countless summer afternoons. "This is where you grew up?" Alexander asked, his eyes taking in the modest surroundings. "Home sweet home," Lily replied, pulling into a parking spot near the town square. "I thought we could stop here before heading to my parents' house. Maybe get some lunch?" Alexander nodded, though she noticed his shoulders tense as he stepped out of the car. A few locals walking by waved at Lily, their curious gazes lingering on her well-dressed companion. "Mrs. Peterson!" Lily called out to an elderly woman sweeping the sidewalk in front of the flower shop. "How are you?" "Lily, dear!" The woman's face lit up. "It's been ages!" She looked Alexander up and down with undisguised interest. "And who might this handsome young man be?" Lily felt her cheeks warm. "This is Alexander. He's my, I'm her partner," Alexander said smoothly, extending his hand. Mrs. Peterson's eyebrows shot up, but she smiled warmly. "Come on," Lily said quickly, leading Alexander down the street. "I want to show you something." They walked to a small park tucked between 2 buildings. A weather-worn gazebo stood in its center, surrounded by flowering shrubs and old oak trees. "This was my favorite spot growing up," Lily explained, running her hand along the gazebo's railing. "I used to come here to read, especially when things got chaotic at home with Sarah running around." Alexander looked around, taking in the peaceful setting. "I can see why. It's nice." Lily laughed. "You don't have to pretend. I know it's nothing like your gardens at the mansion." "No, I mean it," he insisted, surprising her with his earnestness. "There's something genuine about this place. Real." They continued their walk, stopping at Danny's diner for lunch. The bell above the door chimed as they entered, and the familiar scent of coffee and grilled onions wrapped around Lily like a warm blanket. "Lily!" Danny himself called from behind the counter. "Your usual?" "You remember?" Lily asked, delighted. "Cheeseburger, extra pickles, no onions," Danny recited with a wink. "Hard to forget when you ordered it every Saturday for 10 years straight." Alexander watched this exchange with interest. "I'll have the same," he said, settling into a booth across from Lily. As they waited for their food, Lily pointed out various town landmarks through the window. "That's where I had my first job, at the bookstore. And see that tree? I fell out of it when I was 8 and broke my arm. Sarah was convinced she could fix it with a popsicle stick and some tape." To her surprise, Alexander laughed, a real, genuine laugh that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "I can picture that perfectly." Their burgers arrived, and Lily watched in amusement as Alexander, probably used to fine dining, tackled the messy sandwich with unexpected enthusiasm. "This is incredible," he admitted between bites, a spot of ketchup on his chin. Without thinking, Lily reached across the table with a napkin to wipe it away. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them moved. The spell was broken by Danny's booming voice. "How about some pie? Just baked fresh this morning." They spent the afternoon exploring more of Lily's childhood haunts. The creek where she learned to skip stones, the old movie theater where she saw her first film, the ice cream shop where the owner, Mr. Giuseppe, insisted on giving them free scoops for young love. As the sun began to dip, casting long shadows across Main Street, Lily noticed something different about Alexander. His usual rigid posture had relaxed, and he'd stopped checking his phone for business emails. When Mr. Giuseppe's grandson showed them magic tricks with bottle caps, Alexander not only smiled but joined in, revealing a playful side she'd never seen before. Walking back to the car, they passed a group of children playing hopscotch on the sidewalk. One little girl stumbled, and before Lily could react, Alexander reached out to steady her. "Careful there," he said gently, his smile reaching his eyes. The little girl beamed up at him before running back to her friends, and Lily felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that spread through her entire body. This wasn't the stern, closed-off man from the mansion. This was someone else entirely, someone who laughed at bad jokes and ate messy burgers and helped little girls who stumbled. The mansion felt different now, warmer somehow. Despite its imposing marble floors and towering ceilings. After returning from their trip to Lily's hometown, something had shifted between them, like ice melting in spring. One evening, after dinner, Alexander surprised Lily by suggesting they watch a movie together. She found him in the mansion's private theater, a room she'd only glimpsed before, with plush leather recliners and a screen that covered an entire wall. "I haven't actually used this room in years," Alexander admitted, running his hand along one of the seats. "It felt too empty by myself." Lily settled into one of the recliners, tucking her feet under her. "What should we watch?" "You choose," he said, handing her the remote. "I trust your judgment." She selected an old classic, a romantic comedy she'd watched countless times. As the movie played, she couldn't help stealing glances at Alexander. His usual stern expression had softened in the dim light, and occasionally, when something funny happened on screen, his lips would twitch into a smile. Halfway through the movie, he caught her looking. Instead of turning away, he held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary, making her heart skip a beat. The next day, they found themselves in the mansion's library. Lily was organizing books. Old habits died hard, when Alexander appeared with a chess set. "Do you play?" he asked, setting up the pieces on a small table by the window. "I used to play with my father," she said, joining him. "But I warn you, I'm terrible." Alexander's eyes crinkled with amusement. "I'll teach you." Hours slipped by as they played, Alexander patiently explaining strategies, while Lily tried her best to remember which pieces moved where. She lost spectacularly every time, but she didn't mind. There was something intimate about the way he leaned forward to demonstrate moves, his voice soft and encouraging. The days began to follow a pleasant pattern. They'd have breakfast together. Then Alexander would work while Lily explored the mansion or read in the library. In the evenings, they'd find ways to spend time together, watching movies, playing chess, or just talking. One night, they sat in the garden, fairy lights twinkling in the trees above them. Alexander had ordered pizza, actual delivery pizza, which felt delightfully out of place on the elegant patio furniture. "I never thought I'd see the day," Lily teased, "when Alexander Montgomery would eat pizza straight from the box." "There are many things I never thought I'd do," he replied, his voice quiet but meaningful. They stayed outside long after the pizza was gone, talking about everything and nothing. Alexander told her about his childhood dreams of becoming an astronaut before family expectations led him down a different path. Lily shared stories about her sister Sarah's wild adventures and her mother's famous chocolate chip cookies. As the night grew cooler, Alexander noticed Lily shivering slightly. Without a word, he shrugged off his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. His fingers brushed against her neck, sending a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. "Thank you," she whispered, pulling the jacket closer. It smelled like him, a mix of expensive cologne and something uniquely Alexander. They were sitting closer now, their shoulders almost touching. The fairy lights cast a soft glow on Alexander's face, making him look younger, more vulnerable. His eyes met hers, and the air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. Slowly, Alexander leaned in. Lily's heart thundered in her chest as she felt his breath on her face. For a moment, she thought he was going to kiss her, and she realized how much she wanted him to. But then something flickered in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or uncertainty, and he pulled back, running a hand through his hair. The moment shattered like delicate glass. "It's getting late," he said quietly, his voice rough. "We should head inside." Lily nodded, trying to hide her disappointment. As they walked back to the mansion, she could feel the weight of all the things left unsaid between them, wondering if Alexander's heart was racing as fast as hers. The morning sun streamed through the mansion's windows as Lily arranged fresh flowers in the grand entryway. She hummed softly, thinking about the almost kiss from the night before, when the doorbell's sharp ring cut through her daydream. Through the ornate glass panels, she saw a striking woman in a designer suit, her red-soled heels clicking against the marble steps. Before Lily could reach for the handle, one of the staff members hurried to open the door. "Victoria," the woman announced, sweeping inside like she owned the place. "I'm here to see Alexander." Lily's stomach tightened as she watched the woman's perfectly manicured hand brush imaginary dust from her sleeve. Everything about her exuded wealth and sophistication, from her expertly styled hair to her Hermes bag. "Ms. Brighton," the staff member nodded. "I'll inform Mr. Montgomery of your arrival." Victoria's eyes landed on Lily, scanning her from head to toe. "And you are?" Before Lily could answer, Alexander's voice echoed from the top of the stairs. "Victoria?" The surprise in his tone was evident, but there was something else too, a warmth Lily hadn't expected. "Alexander, darling." Victoria's face lit up as he descended the stairs. "It's been too long." Lily watched as they embraced, her chest tightening at the familiarity between them. Alexander's usual rigid posture had softened, and a ghost of a smile played on his lips, the kind of smile that had taken Lily weeks to earn. "What brings you here?" Alexander asked, leading Victoria toward his study. He paused, seeming to suddenly remember Lily's presence. "Ah, Victoria, this is Lily. She's—" He hesitated, and Lily felt the weight of that pause like a physical thing. "She's staying here for a while." "How lovely," Victoria said, though her tone suggested she found it anything but. "Alexander and I go way back, don't we, dear? We practically grew up together." Alexander nodded, his expression unreadable. "Victoria's father was my father's closest business partner." "And we were inseparable," Victoria added, placing a perfectly manicured hand on Alexander's arm. "Until you became such a recluse, that is." Lily felt invisible as they reminisced about shared memories, summer holidays in the Hamptons, charity galas, private school adventures. Each story highlighted the gulf between her world and Alexander's, making her increasingly aware of her simple dress and practical shoes. "You must join us for tea," Victoria announced, turning to Lily with a practiced smile. "I'd love to hear how you came to stay in this magnificent house." The three of them moved to the sunroom, where a staff member quickly arranged tea and pastries. Lily sat stiffly on the edge of her chair, watching Victoria gracefully stir honey into her tea. "So, Alexander," Victoria leaned forward, "I'm actually here about the Wellington merger. Daddy thought it might be better to discuss it in person given our history." Alexander's eyebrows rose slightly. "The Wellington merger? I thought that was settled months ago." "Well, there have been some developments." Victoria's laugh tinkled like expensive crystal. "But we don't need to bore poor Lily with business talk." Lily felt her cheeks flush. She wasn't sure what stung more, being dismissed as someone who couldn't understand business matters, or watching Alexander fall into an easy conversation about mergers and acquisitions with this woman from his past. As they talked, Victoria kept touching Alexander's arm or knee, each casual contact making Lily's heart sink further. Worse still was how Alexander didn't seem to mind. He appeared more animated than usual, drawn into Victoria's orbit like a planet returning to its familiar sun. "We should catch up properly," Victoria suggested, her eyes fixed on Alexander. "Perhaps dinner this week, for old time's sake?" Alexander hesitated, glancing briefly at Lily. "I'm not sure." "Oh, come now," Victoria pressed. "Surely you can spare one evening for an old friend. We have so much to discuss, and you know how well we've always understood each other." The air in the room felt thick with tension, as Alexander seemed to wrestle with the decision. Lily wanted to say something, to remind him of their growing connection, but the words stuck in her throat. She felt like an intruder in a scene from someone else's life, someone who belonged in this world of mergers and private schools and summer homes. Victoria's visits became a daily occurrence over the next week. Each time she arrived, perfectly coiffed and carrying designer bags filled with business documents, Lily felt the mansion's warmth drain away. The comfortable routine she and Alexander had built crumbled piece by piece. During breakfast, Alexander checked his phone constantly, responding to Victoria's messages. Their quiet dinners, once filled with meaningful conversations, grew sparse as he often dined out with Victoria to discuss urgent business matters. Lily wandered the empty halls, feeling like a ghost in her own home. The staff gave her sympathetic glances, but no one dared speak about the situation. She'd catch snippets of Victoria's laughter floating from Alexander's study, the kind of carefree sound that spoke of years of shared history. One afternoon, Lily found herself arranging flowers in the living room, an old habit from her days as a maid that helped calm her nerves. Victoria's voice drifted from the study. "Really, Alexander, you can't keep playing house like this. What would your father think?" Victoria's words were clear through the partially open door. "The board members are starting to talk. A maid. It's hardly fitting for someone of your position." Lily's hands trembled, nearly dropping the crystal vase. She waited for Alexander to defend her, to say something, anything, about their growing connection. Instead, silence stretched out like a void. When Victoria left that evening, Lily confronted Alexander in his study. "Do you agree with her?" Her voice quivered despite her attempt to stay calm. "Am I just someone you're playing house with?" Alexander looked up from his laptop, his expression guarded. "You don't understand the complexities of my position, Lily. Victoria knows this world. She knows the expectations. I understand perfectly well," Lily cut in, her hurt turning to anger. "I understand that you've barely spoken to me all week. I understand that every time she walks in you forget I exist. That's not fair." Alexander stood, his jaw tightening. "Victoria represents important business connections. Her father's company—" "This isn't about business," Lily's voice rose. "This is about you hiding behind your work because you're afraid. You're letting her manipulate you because it's easier than facing your feelings." "Don't presume to know my feelings," Alexander snapped, his calm facade cracking. "You have no idea what Victoria and I have been through together. She was there during the darkest period of my life, when I lost—" He stopped abruptly, running a hand through his hair. "When you lost your first love," Lily finished softly. "I know. But I'm not her, Alexander. I'm not your past, and I'm not Victoria. I'm just me, trying to understand if what's growing between us means anything to you at all." "You don't know what you're talking about." Alexander's voice turned cold. "This arrangement was meant to be temporary, a trial. Don't make it into something it's not." The words hit Lily like physical blows. "So that's all this is to you? An arrangement? What did you expect?" Alexander's words came out, harsh, defensive. That we'd fall in love and live happily ever after? This isn't a fairy tale, Lily. Real life is about making practical decisions. Real life is about being honest with yourself, Lily countered, tears threatening to fall. But you're so scared of being hurt again that you'd rather push away something real for something safe. Enough! Alexander slammed his hand on the desk, making Lily jump. You don't get to psychoanalyze me. You don't get to tell me what I'm feeling or why I'm feeling it. He stormed past her, pausing at the door. Maybe Victoria's right. Maybe this whole experiment was a mistake. The door slammed behind him, leaving Lily alone in the study. She sank into a chair, her legs no longer able to support her. The mansion's silence pressed in around her, suffocating in its emptiness. Everything they'd built together over the past weeks felt like it was crumbling to dust. She looked around the study, at the expensive furniture and rare books, all symbols of a world she'd tried to fit into. Perhaps it was time to admit defeat. Perhaps it was time to leave before her heart broke completely. Lily sat in the garden, watching the sun set behind the mansion's elaborate hedges. The roses she'd tended during her stay were in full bloom, their sweet fragrance a bitter reminder of everything she'd invested in this place. In him, the sound of footsteps on the gravel path made her heart clench. She didn't need to turn around to know it was Alexander. His presence had become familiar enough that she could sense it. Lily. His voice was quiet, controlled. Always controlled. We need to talk. She nodded, keeping her eyes on the horizon. About Victoria? About everything. Alexander sat on the bench beside her, maintaining a careful distance. His shoulders were rigid, hands clasped tightly in his lap. I've been doing a lot of thinking. That sounds ominous. Lily tried to smile, but it felt wrong on her face. Alexander was silent for a long moment, staring at the garden she'd brought back to life. When Claire died, he began, his voice barely above a whisper. I thought I'd never feel anything again. I didn't want to. It was easier being numb. Lily's breath caught. He rarely spoke about Claire, his first love. But then you came along with your jokes and your kindness, he continued. You made me feel things I wasn't ready for. Things I'm still not ready for. Alexander, please let me finish. He closed his eyes, his expression pained. Seeing Victoria again, it brought everything back. Not because I have feelings for her, but because she represents that time in my life. She was there when I lost Claire. She understands that part of me. And I don't? Lily asked softly. You represent something different, something new, and that terrifies me. Alexander stood up, pacing the garden path. I thought I could do this. I thought I could move forward, but I'm still tangled up in my past. It's not fair to you. Lily felt tears burning behind her eyes. So what are you saying? I'm saying we should end this trial marriage early. The words came out clipped, professional. You deserve someone who can give you their whole heart, not someone who's still haunted by ghosts. The garden blurred as tears finally spilled over. I never asked for your whole heart, Lily whispered. I just asked for a chance. And I can't give you that right now. Alexander's voice cracked slightly. Every time I look at you, I see possibilities, a future. And then I remember Claire, and I freeze. I can't move forward while I'm still looking back. Lily stood, wiping her eyes. I understand. And she did. That was the worst part. She understood his pain, his fear, his inability to let go. It didn't make it hurt any less. I'll have the staff help you pack, Alexander said, reverting to his businessman tone. Of course, I'll provide a generous severance package. Stop. Lily held up her hand. Please don't turn this into a business transaction. We both deserve better than that. Alexander fell silent, his mask slipping just enough to show the pain underneath. I'll pack my things tonight, Lily said quietly. I can be gone by morning. She turned to leave, but Alexander caught her arm. For a moment she thought he might change his mind, might ask her to stay. Instead, he simply said, I'm sorry. Lily nodded, gently pulling away. So am I. In her room, the luxurious guest suite that had never quite felt like home, Lily methodically folded her clothes into her old suitcase. The few designer pieces Alexander had bought her stayed in the closet. She couldn't bear to take them. The staff hovered anxiously, offering to help, but she declined. This was something she needed to do alone. Each item she packed felt like acknowledging another broken dream, another what-if that would never be. When everything was ready, Lily sat on the edge of the bed, looking around the room that had briefly held so much promise. She thought about the quiet dinners, the sunset conversations, the almost kiss that now felt like it happened in another lifetime. She thought about Alexander's walls, built so high and strong that even love couldn't break through. Maybe she had been naive to think she could heal someone who wasn't ready to be healed. Maybe she had been foolish to believe that love could conquer past trauma. Or maybe, she thought as she picked up her suitcase, the timing had simply been wrong. Lily sat at her childhood bedroom window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. Her old twin bed felt too small now, the pink walls too young. Everything felt different after living in Alexander's mansion, though she couldn't tell if it was the luxury she missed, or him. Her mother knocked softly before entering with a steaming cup of tea. Thought you might need this, sweetheart. Thanks, Mom. Lily accepted the cup, wrapping her hands around its warmth. Want to talk about it? Lily shook her head, then changed her mind. I just feel silly. I knew what I was getting into. It was supposed to be a trial marriage, an arrangement. I wasn't supposed to... She trailed off, unable to say the words. Fall in love? Her mother finished gently. Yeah. Lily took a sip of tea, letting the familiar comfort wash over her. The funny thing is, I didn't even realize it was happening. It wasn't like in the movies, with fireworks and grand gestures. It was quiet moments. The way he'd leave his office door open when I cleaned nearby, even though he always kept it closed before. How he started remembering how I took my coffee. The little things. Her mother sat on the bed beside her. Those little things are what real love is made of. But that's just it, Lily said, setting down her tea. I learned to love him in all these small ways. The way he folds his newspaper just so. How he pretends not to care about the garden but waters it when he thinks no one's looking. Even his sadness. I learned to love that too, because it's part of who he is. She stood up, pacing the small room. Everyone thinks it was just about the money, about living in that beautiful mansion. But I would have loved him in a tiny apartment, eating takeout on the floor. I would have loved him through all his healing if he'd let me. Sometimes people need to heal on their own, her mother said softly. I know. Lily picked up a framed photo from her dresser, her high school graduation. She looked so young, so certain about everything. I just wish... A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Her father stood there, holding an envelope. This just came for you, honey. Special delivery. Lily's heart skipped when she saw the familiar letterhead. Her parents exchanged glances and quietly left the room as she sank onto her bed, staring at Alexander's precise handwriting on the envelope. With trembling fingers, she opened it. Dear Lily, I've written this letter a dozen times, and each version feels inadequate. How do I explain that pushing you away was the hardest thing I've ever done? That watching you leave felt like losing a part of myself? The truth is, I'm broken. Claire's death left cracks in me that I thought would never heal. I built walls around my heart, thinking they would protect me from more pain. But you with your gentle spirit and unexpected humor, you found ways through those walls without even trying. That terrified me. I realized I was starting to depend on your presence. The house feels empty without your humming in the halls. The garden looks lifeless without your care. Even my morning coffee tastes wrong, because you're not there to remind me to add sugar. You deserve someone whole, someone who can love you without reservation or fear. Right now, that's not me. I need time to properly grieve, to heal these old wounds that I've ignored for too long. I need to learn how to love without being afraid of loss. I'm not asking you to wait for me. That wouldn't be fair. I just wanted you to know that what we shared was real, even if I couldn't fully embrace it. You taught me that my heart isn't as dead as I thought it was. You showed me that love can be gentle, patient, and kind. Thank you for that gift, even if I wasn't ready to receive it fully. Yours, Alexander. Lily pressed the letter to her chest, tears falling freely now. Every word felt like a bittersweet confirmation of what she'd felt growing between them. She understood his need to heal, respected his honesty about it. But understanding didn't make it hurt any less. She looked out at the rain again, the letter still clutched in her hands, wondering what to do next. Part of her wanted to run back to the mansion, to tell him they could heal together. Another part knew he was right. Some journeys had to be walked alone. Rain drummed against the window of Lily's childhood bedroom as she sat cross-legged on her old twin bed, Alexander's letter spread before her. She'd read it so many times over the past 3 days that the creases in the paper had gone soft, the ink slightly smudged from her fingertips, tracing his words. You showed me that love can be gentle, patient, and kind. Those words kept echoing in her mind. She glanced around her small bedroom, taking in the familiar pale blue walls and the worn quilt her grandmother had made. Everything here represented safety, comfort, the easy path. But the easy path wasn't always the right one. Honey? Her mother's voice drifted up from downstairs. Dinner's almost ready. Lily stood up, walking to her dresser where she caught her reflection in the mirror. Dark circles shadowed her eyes from sleepless nights spent thinking about Alexander, about his pain, about the walls he'd built around himself. She touched the glass, remembering how he'd looked at her across the dinner table in those quiet evenings at the mansion, his eyes holding a warmth that contradicted his carefully maintained distance. I can't just leave it like this, she whispered to her reflection. With sudden determination, she pulled her old duffel bag from under the bed. Her hands moved quickly, mechanically, folding clothes and gathering essentials. The movement felt right, like her body had made the decision before her mind caught up. Her mother appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. Lily, what are you doing? I have to go back, Mom. Lily continued packing, her movements decisive. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy. The maid who fell for the millionaire CEO. It sounds like a bad romance novel. Nobody thinks that, sweetheart. But it's not about any of that. Lily zipped the bag closed with finality. You know how Dad sometimes needs to be alone in his workshop when he's upset? But you always leave a plate of food outside the door anyway? Her mother nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. That's what love is, isn't it? Respecting someone's need for space while still letting them know you're there. Lily's voice grew stronger with conviction. Alexander thinks he needs to heal alone, but maybe what he really needs is to know that someone will still be there when he's ready to open the door. Her mother crossed the room and pulled her into a tight hug. When did my little girl get so wise? I learned from the best. Lily squeezed back, drawing strength from her mother's embrace. The drive back to the mansion felt both longer and shorter than she remembered. Rain continued to fall, creating a hypnotic pattern on her windshield. Each mile marker brought a new wave of doubt, but she pushed through it. The letter lay on the passenger seat, a reminder of why she was making this journey. As she turned onto the familiar private road leading to the mansion, her heart began to race. The imposing gates opened automatically. They hadn't removed her access code yet. The gravel crunched under her tires as she pulled up to the front entrance. Through the rain-streaked windows, she could see lights on in Alexander's study. A figure moved behind the curtains, and her breath caught in her throat. This was it. No turning back now. Lily stepped out into the rain, not bothering with an umbrella. Her hair quickly became plastered to her face, but she hardly noticed. Her feet carried her up the familiar steps to the front door. Before she could lose her nerve, she pressed the doorbell. Moments stretched like hours as she waited, water dripping from her clothes onto the marble step. Then the door opened, and there he was. Alexander stood frozen in the doorway, his usual composed expression shattered by genuine shock. His tie was loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up, signs of a long day of work. But what caught Lily's attention was the relief that flooded his features, so raw and unexpected it made her heart ache. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the steady patter of rain. Alexander stepped back, gesturing for her to come inside. Water dripped from Lily's clothes onto the marble floor of the foyer, creating small puddles that reflected the warm light from the crystal chandelier above. "You're soaked," he said softly, disappearing for a moment before returning with a plush towel. His hands trembled slightly as he handed it to her, betraying his usually composed demeanor. Lily accepted the towel, dabbing at her face and hair. "I got your letter." Alexander ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as a sign of his nervousness. "I wasn't sure you'd read it." "I've read it so many times I could probably recite it from memory," she admitted, wrapping the towel around her shoulders. He led her to the living room, where a fire crackled in the massive stone fireplace. The familiar space held so many memories of their quiet evenings together, of conversations that had slowly bridged the gap between their worlds. Alexander stood by the mantel, his fingers tracing the edge of a silver frame she'd never noticed before. "This was Claire," he said quietly, turning the frame so Lily could see. The photograph showed a young woman with a bright smile, frozen in time. "She died 6 years ago. Cancer. We were engaged." Lily's heart ached at the pain in his voice. "I'm so sorry, Alexander." "I thought I was protecting myself by keeping everyone at arm's length," he continued, setting the frame face down. "When you came into my life with your warmth and kindness, it terrified me. The way you made me feel—" He paused, collecting his thoughts. "I started to care too much, and all I could think about was how devastating it would be to lose you, too." "So you pushed me away first," Lily said softly, understanding dawning in her eyes. Alexander moved closer, his expression more vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. "I was a coward. Instead of facing my fears, I let them control me. I convinced myself that ending things on my terms would hurt less." He shook his head, self-reproach evident in his features. "I was wrong. These past few days without you. I've realized that I'm more afraid of never taking this chance with you than I am of what might happen if I do. Alexander, please." He held up his hand. "Let me finish. I know I hurt you and I can't take that back. But I want to try again. Properly this time. No more trial marriage, no more artificial arrangements. Just us, getting to know each other naturally, building something real together." His voice grew softer. "That is, if you're willing to give me another chance." Lily stood up, closing the distance between them. She could see the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear of rejection warring with hope. I didn't come back because of your wealth or status, she said carefully. I came back because I saw glimpses of the real you, the man who laughs at terrible jokes over breakfast, who gets excited talking about old books, who cares so deeply he's afraid to show it. And that's enough? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It's a start, she replied, reaching out to take his hand. But we need to do this differently. No more hiding behind walls or running away when things get scary. We need to be honest with each other, even when it's difficult. Alexander's fingers tightened around hers. I can do that. I want to do that with you. Then we'll take it slow, Lily said firmly. One day at a time, no pressure, no expectations, just us getting to know each other for who we really are. The tension in Alexander's shoulders eased slightly. I'd like that, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. Would you like to start now? Maybe over dinner? I haven't eaten yet, and I'm guessing you haven't either. Lily smiled back, feeling the first stirrings of hope in her chest. Dinner sounds perfect. The autumn breeze rustled through the Japanese maple trees in the mansion's garden, their crimson leaves dancing in the late afternoon light. 2 months had passed since Lily returned, and each day brought them closer together, healing old wounds and building new trust. Lily sat on the garden bench, watching Alexander tend to the roses, a hobby she'd discovered he secretly enjoyed. His sleeves were rolled up, exposing strong forearms as he carefully pruned the thorny stems. It still amazed her how different he was now, more open and vulnerable, letting her see sides of him he'd kept hidden for so long. You're staring, he said without looking up, a smile playing at his lips. Just admiring the view, she teased, making him chuckle. These easy moments between them felt natural now, their relationship growing stronger through honest conversations and shared experiences. Alexander stood, brushing dirt from his hands. Are you ready for our evening out? You still haven't told me where we're going, Lily reminded him, accepting his offered hand as she stood. That's because it's a surprise. His eyes sparkled with mischief, a look that made her heart skip. Wear something warm. An hour later, they were driving through winding country roads as the sun began its descent. Lily watched the landscape change from manicured estates to wild, rolling hills. Alexander seemed slightly nervous, his fingers tapping against the steering wheel in an unusual display of restlessness. Finally, they turned onto a narrow path that led to the top of a hill. When they stepped out of the car, Lily gasped. The hilltop overlooked a vast valley, with mountains in the distance painted in sunset colors. A small table had been set up, complete with champagne and covered dishes. Alexander, this is beautiful, she breathed, taking in the spectacular view. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her close. This place, it's special to me. I used to come here when I needed to think, especially after Claire died. It helped me feel closer to heaven, I suppose. His voice grew softer. You're the first person I've ever brought here. Lily squeezed his hand, understanding the significance of the gesture. Over the past months, he'd gradually shared more about Claire, working through his grief instead of letting it control him. Each confession, each memory shared had brought them closer together. They sat down to eat, enjoying the gourmet meal as the sky transformed into a canvas of pink and gold. Alexander seemed distracted, his responses slightly delayed, his movements uncertain. Is everything okay? Lily asked, reaching across the table to touch his hand. He met her eyes, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. More than okay. Lily, these past months with you, you've shown me what it means to truly live again, not just exist. He stood up, walking around to her side of the table. You didn't try to replace what I lost or compete with my past. You simply loved me, exactly as I am, and gave me the space and support to heal. Lily's heart began to race as Alexander knelt before her, taking both her hands in his. The first time I proposed, it was a business arrangement born from fear and loneliness. But now, he pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a delicate diamond ring. Now I'm asking because I can't imagine my life without you, because you've taught me that love isn't something to fear, but something to cherish. Tears welled in Lily's eyes as she watched this strong, complicated man bare his soul to her. The setting sun caught the diamond's facets, sending rainbow sparkles across their joined hands. Lily, his voice wavered slightly, will you marry me? Not because of wealth or status or any arrangement, but because I love you with everything I am? Her vision blurred with happy tears as she looked at the man before her. Not the cold CEO she'd first known, but the warm, caring person she'd fallen in love with. She saw their journey reflected in his eyes, the awkward dinners, the late-night conversations, the painful separations, and the joyful reunions. All of it had led them here, to this perfect moment. The gentle autumn breeze rustled through the mansion's gardens as Lily arranged fresh flowers in a crystal vase. These quiet moments had become her favorite part of living with Alexander. She watched him through the window as he tended to the rose garden, a hobby that surprised her at first, but now seemed perfectly fitting for the man she'd grown to love so deeply. The yellow ones are blooming early this year, Alexander called out as she stepped onto the patio. His face softened when he looked at her, the stern CEO facade completely gone. These days, his smiles came more easily, especially when they were alone together. They're beautiful, Lily replied, kneeling beside him to admire the delicate petals. Just like the ones we had at our wedding. Alexander's hand found hers, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. I never thought I'd find peace like this again, he admitted quietly. After Claire, I convinced myself that closing off my heart was the only way to survive. Lily squeezed his hand, understanding the weight of his words. Over the past months, they'd developed a rhythm to their life together, one that allowed space for both joy and healing. Some days were harder than others, moments when memories of the past threatened to overwhelm them. But they faced them together now. Remember when we first started our trial marriage? Lily asked, helping him gather the pruning tools. I was so nervous I could barely speak during dinner. Alexander chuckled, the sound warm and rich. And I was terrified of letting you see past my walls. Now look at us, gardening together like an old married couple. They made their way inside as the evening approached, their movements synchronized after months of sharing the same space. The mansion no longer felt cold or imposing to Lily. It had become their home, filled with small touches that reflected their shared life. In the kitchen, they worked side by side preparing dinner, another change that had surprised the staff. Alexander, it turned out, enjoyed cooking when he had the time. He'd even started teaching Lily some of his mother's old recipes, each dish carrying stories of his childhood that he now felt comfortable sharing. I found some old photo albums today, Lily mentioned as she chopped vegetables. There's one of you as a teenager looking so serious in your first business suit. Alexander paused in his cooking. Those were difficult years. After my parents died, I thought I had to become someone else entirely, someone harder, someone who couldn't be hurt. Lily set down her knife and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her cheek against his back. She felt the tension slowly leave his body as he relaxed into her embrace. You don't have to be that person anymore, she reminded him softly. I know, he murmured. You showed me that it's okay to be both, to be strong and vulnerable, to lead and to lean on someone else. They finished cooking together, their conversation flowing naturally between light-hearted topics and deeper discussions. This was what healing looked like for them. Not a dramatic transformation, but small moments of trust and understanding built day by day. After dinner, they settled into their evening routine. Alexander read reports while Lily curled up beside him with a book, their comfortable silence occasionally broken by shared observations or gentle touches. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting warm shadows across the room. "I never expected this," Alexander said suddenly, setting aside his work. "When you first made that joke about marriage, I thought I was taking a calculated risk. I didn't realize you would become essential to my happiness." Lily marked her place in her book and looked up at him. "And I never thought the intimidating CEO would turn out to be such a softy who likes gardening and cooking." They shared a laugh, the sound echoing through the room that had witnessed their journey from awkward strangers to devoted partners. Each evening spent like this was a quiet victory over their past fears and doubts, a testament to the healing power of patient love. The modest two-story house looked tiny compared to the mansion, but Alexander found himself drawn to its warmth as they pulled into the driveway. Christmas lights twinkled along the gutters, and smoke curled from the chimney into the crisp winter air. Lily squeezed his hand. "Ready?" He nodded, though his heart raced. This was different from business meetings or board presentations. This was Lily's family, the people who had shaped her into the remarkable woman he loved. The front door burst open before they reached it. Lily. A woman who could only be her mother rushed out, wrapping Lily in a tight hug. Her father followed more slowly, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "And you must be Alexander," her mother said, turning to him with open arms. He stiffened for a moment, unused to such casual affection, but then relaxed into her embrace. It felt right. "Thank you for having me, Mrs. Chen," he said formally. "Oh, none of that. Call me Susan." She ushered them inside, where the scent of cinnamon and roasting turkey filled the air. The house was crowded with Lily's extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, all talking and laughing. Children darted between legs, chasing each other with toy cars. It was chaos compared to his quiet mansion, but Alexander found himself oddly at ease. Lily's father, David, handed him a beer. "Come on, son. The game's about to start." In the living room, Alexander settled onto the worn couch beside David and Lily's uncles. They welcomed him into their conversation about football naturally, explaining team histories and rivalries. He found himself relaxing, offering his own observations. From the kitchen, he could hear Lily laughing with her mother and aunts. The sound made him smile. "She's different with you," David said quietly during a commercial break. "Happier? More confident?" "She changed me too," Alexander admitted. "I was lost before her." David nodded, understanding in his eyes. That's what love does when it's real. Later, they gathered around the dining table, so crowded their elbows touched. Lily's mother had outdone herself. Turkey, stuffing, 3 kinds of potatoes, endless side dishes. Alexander watched in amazement as Lily's youngest cousin piled his plate impossibly high. "So, Alexander," Lily's Aunt Maria asked, "how are you adjusting to married life?" He glanced at Lily, who was helping her mother serve pie. "Better than I could have imagined. Lily makes everything better. Work, home, life itself. She gets that from her mother," David said proudly. "Heart of gold, that one." After dinner, Alexander found himself drafted into dish duty with Lily's teenage cousins. They chatted easily about school and their dreams for the future. One wanted to study business, and Alexander promised to mentor him. In the living room, Lily's youngest cousins convinced him to play board games. He couldn't remember the last time he'd played Monopoly, but soon he was fully invested, dramatically bemoaning his losses when the children bought his properties. "I've never seen you like this," Lily whispered, settling beside him on the floor. I've never felt like this, he admitted. Part of a family. As the evening wound down, they gathered for photos. Alexander stood tall behind Lily, her parents on either side, surrounded by aunts, uncles, cousins. When Susan showed him the picture later, he was struck by how natural he looked there, like he'd always belonged. In a quiet moment, while Lily helped pack leftover turkey into containers, Alexander found himself in the kitchen with Susan. "Thank you," he said softly, "for welcoming me so warmly." She patted his cheek. "You're family now, dear. That's what families do." Later, as they prepared to leave, loaded down with leftovers and hugs, Alexander pulled Lily close. "I never knew what I was missing," he murmured. "Thank you for sharing your family with me." "They're your family too now," she reminded him. "I know, and I promise to cherish all of you, always." He kissed her temple, feeling truly at peace. As the winter evening settled around them, Alexander and Lily sat in the mansion's conservatory. Moonlight filtered through the glass ceiling, casting silver shadows across the indoor garden they'd cultivated together over the past months. Lily had added her touch to the once sterile space, filling it with blooming flowers and comfortable cushions. "I never thought I'd find peace like this," Alexander admitted, his fingers intertwined with hers. The warmth of her hand grounded him, a constant reminder that he wasn't alone anymore. Lily smiled, watching how the moonlight softened his usually stern features. "What else do you see in our future?" she asked softly, curious about the dreams he'd kept locked away for so long. Alexander shifted on the cushioned bench, turning to face her fully. "I see mornings where we wake up together, sharing coffee and reading the newspaper." His voice grew warmer with each word. "I see us traveling to places I've only visited for business, but this time taking the time to actually explore and enjoy them together." "I'd love that," Lily responded, her eyes bright with possibility. "I've always wanted to see Paris in the spring." "Then we'll go to Paris," he said simply, as if making a business decision, but his gentle smile betrayed the emotion behind his words. "We could walk along the Seine, visit the little cafes you've told me about." Lily leaned her head against his shoulder, breathing in his familiar scent. "What about here? At home?" Alexander was quiet for a moment, thoughtful. "I want to make this place truly ours. Not just my mansion where you live, but our home." He gestured to the conservatory around them. "Like what you've done here, bringing life and warmth to every corner." "Maybe we could open up some of the rooms," Lily suggested, thinking of the many closed-off spaces in the massive house. "Make them into something useful, something that brings joy." "Like what?" "Well," she sat up straighter, enthusiasm coloring her voice. "That empty room on the third floor would make a wonderful library. We could fill it with books, add some comfortable reading nooks." Alexander's eyes softened as he watched her describe her vision. "And the room next to it?" Lily hesitated for a moment, then spoke quietly. "Maybe. Maybe someday it could be a nursery." Instead of tensing up as he might have months ago, Alexander squeezed her hand gently. "I'd like that," he admitted. "A family of our own, children running through these halls, filling them with laughter." "Really?" Lily turned to him, surprised by his openness to the idea. "Being with your family showed me what I've been missing," he explained. "The joy, the chaos, the love, I want that for us, for our children." Lily felt tears prick at her eyes. "I want that too." "And I want to be a better man than my father was," Alexander continued, his voice thick with emotion. "I want our children to know they're loved, to never doubt it for a moment." "You already are a better man," Lily assured him, reaching up to touch his cheek. The way you've opened your heart, how you've learned to trust and love again, that takes real strength." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, both lost in thoughts of their future together. The conservatory's plants cast intricate shadows around them, and somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted softly. "What else do you dream about?" Alexander asked finally. "Simple things," Lily replied. "Sunday brunches where we take our time, game nights with friends, growing old together in this house we've made our own." She paused, then added with a slight smile, "And maybe teaching you how to cook something more complicated than toast?" Alexander chuckled, the sound warm and real. "I look forward to burning many meals under your tutelage." "We'll figure it out together," Lily said, squeezing his hand. "That's what matters, doing it together." Alexander pulled her closer, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Together," he agreed, the word a promise. They sat there in the moonlit conservatory, holding hands, their dreams for the future hanging in the air around them like the delicate perfume of night-blooming flowers. The peace between them was profound, built on understanding and trust, strengthened by the challenges they'd overcome. The morning sun filtered through the mansion's stained glass windows, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floors. In one of the upstairs rooms, Lily stood before a full-length mirror, her hands smoothing down the simple but elegant white dress she'd chosen. Her reflection showed a woman transformed, not just by the beautiful gown or the subtle makeup, but by the quiet confidence she'd gained over the past year. "You look absolutely beautiful," her mother said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She stepped forward to adjust Lily's veil, her hands trembling slightly with emotion. Lily took a deep breath, steadying her nerves. The mansion staff had outdone themselves, transforming the grand ballroom into an intimate wedding venue. White roses and lilies adorned every surface, their sweet fragrance drifting through the halls. Down the hall, Alexander stood in his study, adjusting his bow tie for the 10th time. His usual composed demeanor showed tiny cracks of nervousness, a slight tremor in his hands, the way he kept checking his watch. His best man, an old friend from college, watched with amusement. "I never thought I'd see the day," his friend commented, helping Alexander with his cufflinks. "The untouchable Alexander getting married?" Alexander's lips curved into a small smile. "Neither did I," he admitted. "But Lily, she changed everything." The guests began arriving, filling the ballroom with quiet chatter. It was a small gathering, just as they'd wanted. Lily's family, some of Alexander's closest business associates who'd become friends over the years, and the mansion's staff who had become like family to them both. The string quartet began playing softly, and Alexander took his place at the altar they'd created in front of the ballroom's grand fireplace. His heart thundered in his chest as he waited, remembering all the moments that had led to this day, from Lily's bold joke about marriage to their painful separation and eventual reunion. When the wedding march began, Alexander felt time slow down. Lily appeared at the entrance, her father beside her, and everything else faded away. She walked toward him with grace, her eyes bright with unshed tears of joy. The simple elegance of her dress, the way she carried herself. She looked every bit the bride he'd dreamed of but never dared hope for. Their eyes met, and suddenly they were the only two people in the room. Alexander felt his throat tighten with emotion as she drew closer. When her father placed her hand in his, the warmth of her touch grounded him, just as it had done countless times before. The officiant began the ceremony, but Alexander found himself focused on the small details of the moment, the way Lily's hand trembled slightly in his, the soft scent of her perfume, the love shining in her eyes as she looked at him. When it came time for their vows, Alexander's voice was steady and sure. "Lily," he began, You came into my life like a ray of sunshine, breaking through walls I thought were impenetrable. You taught me that love isn't weakness, it's the greatest strength we can possess. I promise to cherish you, to protect you, to grow with you, and to love you more each day than the day before." Lily's voice wavered with emotion as she spoke her vows. "Alexander, you showed me that true love is worth fighting for, worth waiting for. You've given me a home not just in this mansion but in your heart. I promise to stand by your side through whatever life brings, to be your partner in all things, and to love you completely and without reservation." They exchanged rings, simple bands that symbolized their endless love. As Alexander slipped the ring onto Lily's finger, he marveled at how natural it felt, how right. When Lily placed his ring on his finger, her touch lingered, conveying all the love words couldn't express. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared. "You may kiss the bride." Alexander drew Lily close, one hand cradling her face as he kissed her tenderly. The applause of their guests faded into the background as they shared this perfect moment, both of them knowing that they'd found their true home in each other's hearts. As they turned to face their loved ones, now officially husband and wife, both Alexander and Lily felt a profound sense of rightness. They had overcome every obstacle, faced their fears, and emerged stronger together. Their love story, which had begun with a maid's bold joke to a millionaire CEO, had transformed into something beautiful and real, a testament to the power of true love and second chances.